Greetings and salutations, Greek students. We continue our study of the Greek language by looking at the mood of infinitives. Now, up to this point, we've seen infinitives, we've translated them, and it's just that to and then the verbal idea. What we're going to talk about in this lesson is the grammar of infinitives. What you need to know about infinitives in terms of their definition is that they're indeclinable verbal nouns. So just as participle are verbal adjectives, meaning they have the features of verbs and adjectives, infinitives are verbal nouns, meaning they can function both like verbs and as nouns. So let's look at these infinitives. They are not limited by person or number, but are defined by tense. In the case of the infinitives, tense identifies the aspect of the verb, not the time. So just like we saw with participles and subjunctives, when we're in the aorist or when we're in the not in the or even in the present tense, we're not talking about when the infinitive is happening. We're talking about the kind of action being described. So, for example, in the present infinitive, luein, to loose or to be loosing, gets at that imperfective movie clip aspect. The aorist loosai, which you could translate as to loose, is the aoristic. It's the snapshot action. The perfect infinitive, leleukenai, to have loosed, is the present state of the past action, the perfective aspect of the verb. So the infinitive forms of luo, which again we've seen most of these already in the present active luein, in the present middle and passive luestai, in the aorist active lusai, in the aorist middle lusastai, in the aorist passive luthenai, the perfect active leleukenai, the perfect middle and passive lelusthai. Now, notably here, in the aorist, you don't have the epsilon prefix, right? You don't have elusai. So you don't have that epsilon prefix in the infinitive, but when you look at the perfect form of the infinitive, you do have that reduplication, that lelu, kenai, lelusthai, lelusthai. So the reduplication does occur on the perfect, but when it comes to the aorist, you don't have that epsilon prefix. So those are the forms of the infinitive. Hopefully these forms aren't that unfamiliar. We've kind of seen them and been introduced to them along the way. And so now that we're seeing them in sentences, we kind of know, okay, this is an infinitive. Here we're going to learn that the way the infinitive can be used in actual sentences is a bit more complicated than we might initially think. We have to be aware of second aorist verbs that look like present infinitives in form but are aorist in meaning. So again, the key here is that there's been a stem change. So balo, the double lambda, balo, I throw, I cast, in as balein, when you have one lambda, is in that ain ending makes you think, oh, I'm looking at a present infinitive. It's actually an aorist infinitive because the stem has changed, just like what we see with the second aorist active, where you have those imperfect endings with the stem change. Lambano, as labain, to receive, is aorist because you've dropped the mu from lamb on in the stem to lab in the second aorist infinitive form. Similarly, lego becomes apon, and in the second aorist infinitive, apain. So it looks active, or it looks present, but it's second aorist, and so it actually is an aorist infinitive. Again, when we're talking about infinitives, when we talk about tense, we're not talking about the when, we're talking about the kind of action being described. Is it a snapshot action, or is it a kind of imperfective aspect, movie clip? Common features of the infinitive: when the definite article appears. Why would a definite article appear on a verb? Because infinitives are verbal nouns. Whenever a definite article does appear on the verbal noun of the infinitive, it will always be neuter and singular, because the infinitive is always singular, and when it functions as a noun, it's neuter. So ta, tu, to. The infinitive takes prepositions, so dia, en, meta, pra, pros, dia because, en, in or while, meta after, pra before, pros to. These are always going to be in front of the infinitive, prior to the infinitive. The subject of the infinitive, so because it's a verbal noun, it as a verb can have a subject. And we're used to, when we identify a subject of verbs, we're looking, of course, for the nominative case. But when it comes to the infinitive, the subject of the infinitive is going to be in the accusative. So you have to train your brain to go, oh, wait a minute, if I have an infinitive verb, the subject of that infinitive is not going to be a nominative, it's going to be an accusative. You'll begin to pick up on that pretty quickly. And infinitives are negated by may, just like subjunctives. So what are the functions of the infinitive? Well, functions, again, because they're verbal nouns, they can function adverbially. This is when it acts like a verb. Don't forget the subject of the infinitive is in the accusative case. The purpose clause infinitive is when the infinitive indicates the purpose of the main verb. So these can look like a couple of formal options. One is the infinitive alone. So, for example, in Matthew 5:17, me nomisete, do not think, do not consider, hati, that, elthon, I came. Why? To abolish katalusai, ton laon, the law. Don't think that I came to abolish law. Jesus goes on, I'm not come to abolish, but to fulfill. And there, to abolish is describing the purpose of his coming. The purpose of Jesus' coming is not to abolish the law. The infinitive with to, the genitive singular definite article. This is especially common in Luke Acts. So in Luke 22:31, Simon, Simon, idu ha satanas ex te sata. Behold, Satan asked to sift, in order that to sift you, right? Satan wants you. And so this is that purpose infinitive. Eis ta plus the infinitive. Agagon, auton eis ta staurosai. They led him away. Why? For what purpose? Eis ta staurosai, in order to crucify. The purpose of them leading him away was to crucify him in Matthew 27:31. Prosta plus the infinitive. Ephesians 6:11. Endusaste ten panoplion to theu prosta dunasthai humas stenai. Put on ten panoplion, the many-sided armor, the surrounding armor of God. Why? In order to be able for you to stand. Prosta plus the infinitive is that purpose infinitive. So we can have the infinitive alone. We can have the genitive definite article plus the infinitive. We can have eis ta plus the infinitive, and we can have prosta plus the infinitive. So those are four different kinds of those purpose clause infinitives in form. You can also have result clauses. This is most common with hoste plus the infinitive and the result of. So Mark 3:20, kai sun erketai palin ha'aklos. The crowd came together again. Why? What was the result? Not the why, but what happened when they came together? Hoste me dunasthai autus mede artan phagein. With the result that they were not able to eat bread. Now, this is important because they didn't get together so that no one could eat. It was a consequence of them. The crowd came together, and there were so many of them that they weren't able to eat in Mark 3:20. So it wasn't like they said, hey, let's get a crowd so big that we can't eat. This happens, and the crowd is so big that the result of it is that no one has time to eat. Sort of like if you throw a wedding and you're the bride or the groom, you spend all this money in preparation. You don't do that hoping that on the night that you get married, you actually won't have any time to have food because you're talking to so many people. But that is sometimes the result of what happens in that gathering. Another result clause, Matthew 10:1, after calling his 12 disciples, kai proskalasamenos tus dodeca mathetas autou edoken, he gave autois to them exousion, authority, over pneumaton akatharton, unclean spirits, with the result that to cast them out, hoste ekabalein, and to heal all diseases and all sicknesses and diseases. So the result of Jesus giving authority to the 12 disciples, the authority to cast out spirits, or the result of giving them authority over unclean spirits, is that they can cast them out and heal many diseases and sicknesses. The infinitive of time. Like the genitive absolute, the temporal infinitive is a phrase set off from the rest of a sentence. So prin plus the infinitive is going to be before. So in Matthew 1:18, when it talks about how Mary's mother was betrothed to Joseph, prin e sun elthein autus, before they came together, she was found literally having in the womb, which is a way of saying pregnant, ek pneumatos hagiou, from the Holy Spirit. So this is prior to their coming together, but prior to their marriage, she's found to be pregnant. Similarly, John 8:58, epen autois Jesus, amen, amen, Jesus. Jesus said to them, amen, amen, lego, who mean, truly, truly, I say to you, prin Abraham genesthai, before Abraham was, ego eimi, I am. Right? So this is a temporal infinitive, before Abraham existed. And so you can see the various ways in which the infinitive can be used. Contemporaneous infinitive, ento, wow. So this is like the present active participle. The before infinitive is like the aorist participle. Kai egenita, and it happened, ento sperein, in the sowing, while sowing, that what fell along the path, birds came and ate it, right? They came and they ate the seed that was sowed along the path. Luke 3:21, and it happened while baptizing all the people, ento baptis thenai hapanta ton laon. So this is the prior infinitive. There's a subsequent infinitive, meta plus ta plus the infinitive, after meta de ta para da thenai tanyanain. After John was arrested, handed over, Jesus came to Galilee preaching the gospel. Acts 10:41, sun phagomen kai sun piomen auto. We ate and drank with him, metata anastenai, after he rose from the dead. This is describing Peter preaching to Cornelius' house and saying, telling the gospel story, and how when Jesus rose, he wasn't a ghost, he was eating and drinking with the disciples. So these are temporal infinitives, talking about the verbal action either prior to, contemporaneous, or after the main verb. You also have the causal infinitive. This is the cause of the main verb. So you have the purpose, you have the result, you also have causal infinitives. Dia plus the infinitive. So Mark 4:6, kai hate antelein ha helios, and when the sun rose, it burned, and on account of it not having roots, was withered. So this is talking about the seed that was sown, because it didn't take roots. When the sun rose, it withered on account of not having roots. The cause of it withering is not having roots. John 2:24, autos de Jesus uk pistu ein, auton autois diata auton genoskein pantas. Jesus himself did not entrust himself to them. Why? Diata auton, because he, genoskein, knew all things, on account of him knowing all things. So this is why this is the reason, diata. And then, of course, on rare occasions, the infinitive can only make sense as a command. So these are all the adverbial, the verbal uses of the infinitive. To review them, we've got the purpose clause, right? So this can give the purpose for the main action of the sentence. This can be temporal, previous, contemporaneous, subsequent, or causal. So these are the different forms of the and of course, imperatival. These are the 5 different uses of the infinitive as a verb. What about when the infinitive, the verbal noun, acts like a noun? Well, it can be the subject of a sentence. So the infinitive can function like a subject with impersonal verbs. So you often see this: it is necessary, it is lawful, it seems. So Philippians 1:21, ta zein Christos, to live is Christ. Ide de auton di erk esthai di tes Samarias. It was necessary for him to pass through Samaria. Mark 3:4, ex estin tois sabasin agathon poiesai e kako poiesai sukain sosai e apakatenai. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do bad, to save a life or to kill? This is a question, and again, it gets at this this subject. The subject being the subject of the verb: is it lawful? Is what lawful? To do good or to do bad, to save or to kill. That's all the subject of the verb. It is lawful. Similarly, it is necessary. What is necessary? To pass through Samaria. So this is where you have the verbal idea as the subject of your main verb. It can also be the object. The infinitive function is the object most commonly in indirect discourse. Here I point you to Croy's comments on pages 147 through 48 about how indirect discourse works. Indirect discourse is the difference between quoted speech and reported speech. So, for example, in indirect discourse, if I say, my wife told me, take out the trash, that's direct discourse. That's directly reporting. She said, take out the trash. But if I were to tell somebody else, my wife told me to take out the trash, I would be summarizing the content of what she said, but I wouldn't be quoting her. That would be indirect discourse. I'd be reporting back what she said. So in for example, Acts 21:21, telling them not to circumcise the children, well, this isn't providing a quotation of Paul's speech. This is providing a summary of indirect discourse of what it is that Paul was saying. And it can also be used to modify or complete nouns, adjectives, or verbs. So this is all a lot to go through with these infinitives and how they can use. And we'll look at some specific examples momentarily. But in general, you can translate the infinitive to and then the verbal idea, and it will make sense even if you don't have all these grammatical categories to infinitive worked out in your head. So I say that not to say the infinitives are super complicated, you can never understand them, but what these categories give us is ways to think about how is this infinitive working in this particular example. So keep in mind, if all else fails, with the infinitive, to verbal idea, and then start working back and going, okay, how does this relate to the rest of the sentence? And what these different verbal categories give us with the infinitive are some ways to think about how to make sense of infinitives in practice.